Hey guys, Youngblood with you for the second session of Sniper School and Medal of Honor Warfighter. The last episode we talked about how to play smart by really knowing the strengths and weaknesses of a class. We also talked about the secondary a little bit and just general thoughts about it. So if you haven't watched that one yet, go back, take a look. It's worth the time. But in this next episode, what we're talking about now is going to be using the peek and lean function, proximity mines, and effectively spotting and using the supported shooting. One of the first things that I wanted to talk about was the peek and lean function. And if you're watching the screen right now, you're going to see this guy just bobbing and weaving his head in and out. And the reason that it's built into the game and that it's useful is that it keeps you under cover. It allows you to escape very quickly versus actually having to strafe your character back. With a weapon like a sniper rifle, you really have to get that one-shot kill. And you'll notice it takes a long time to chamber that next round. And when you can duck immediately back into cover, you're going to be much more likely to stay safe. It's really useful in situations where you know there's an enemy. Right here you can see that I've got the red outline from where my battle buddy was killed. I knew he was up there, and I also knew where my battle buddy was, so he was looking in that general direction. Knowing that and using this ability is going to help you stay safe. You can bob in and out, you can do it multiple times, you move very quickly, and in addition, you're not showing your legs to the enemy. You're showing your torso, which takes a higher damage, but you're keeping a smaller profile, which makes it harder for them to kill you. The default button for this is actually the Alt button, and while that should be fine, I personally have push to talk set to that, so it makes for some precarious situations. What I ended up doing was binding it to one of my mouse buttons, and I actually had a lot better results, so maybe something for you to keep in mind and check out. Now, regardless of whatever button you decide to use, make sure that you start working it into your gaming, because it's going to make you a better player. It's going to keep you alive longer, and when you're better, you're going to be enjoying the game more. So practice with it, because it's not natural, but it will come. I mentioned in the first video that you have one of the best objective defense tools in the proximity mine. One of the things that you want to keep in mind is it's not a true proximity mine. It's not just if anybody's close it's going to explode. It really is more of a trip mine. I'll show you here in a second how these wires come shooting out of it, and if an enemy runs over one of those wires, it explodes. That being said, I don't want you guys to feel like it's a purely defensive weapon, because you can go on the offense with it. One thing to be aware of when you're using the trip mine is that it's actually not an immediate weapon. It takes 2 seconds to throw it and another 3 for the wires to actually deploy. So it's taking you out of the fight for 2 seconds without a weapon, and then after that you need to wait. So it's more about smart placement, setting traps, and waiting for people to come. Now, one thing that you're going to see here is actually bad proximity placement. It's too close to a wall, and it's got a certain distance that the wires will travel. Here you can see that the only places it was able to connect were on the stairs and that wall, meaning that it's not able to really trip anybody up unless they're really hugging that wall. Same thing applies here. There's a certain distance that the wires can go. It is just too far from a wall to be useful here. No wires come out of it, and you're left with a mine that's sitting in the middle of the ground that's not able to do anything or help you out at all. There's a couple things that you should really look for when deciding where to put down a proximity mine. You don't want it to be an immediate sight line, and you want it to be in pretty close quarters. When an enemy comes around a corner, they're going to have less time to react. So you don't want it to be just right in the middle of a hallway, because the enemies can see the wires just like you can see on my screen right now. Another thing to keep in mind is that the wires are actually black in color. So if you can find a darker area, you're going to have a better chance of somebody come running through it. You know, if you're out in the middle of the sunlight and the wires are exposed to the sun, that black is really going to stand out as compared to up against a shadow. This is one of my favorite spots right here on this staircase. You can barely see the wires at all. It gives a long trip radius. Now, granted, at the edge of the radius, you're going to be less likely to get a kill, but you'll still get some damage, and you can get a kill if you have multiple people rushing through the middle. So be smart about where you're leaving these mines. Now, I mentioned earlier that you could actually use these as an offensive weapon too. It's tougher because they've got a longer delay, but here's a great example where I know there's people camping in this building. I'm almost using them like a cooked grenade. I'm tossing them in there. It waits a second, the wires deploy, but guess what? If you're camping it out in there, you've got nowhere else to go but my wires. So it's going to really help you out. My absolute favorite reason for using these is for when you're working around an objective. Whether you're going to plant a bomb or whether you're trying to just defend a bomb, you can really use these to your advantage. Plant the bomb, drop a proxy mine, get out of there. You may not necessarily get a kill or somebody may blow it up, but the thing that's going to definitely happen is you're going to hear that proxy mine explode. You still hear it if it's destroyed, meaning you're at least alerted to the fact that somebody is on your objective. So you can really use these to help out yourself, help out your team, and it's almost like a second set of eyes on the objective, which is only going to help you win. Speaking of proxy mines, it's a nice transition into using supported shooting and the spotting function, which is the special ability of the sniper class. You can use these proxy mines to watch your back because, as you can see, it takes a minute to actually lock yourself down and zone in. In addition, you lose your map that's actually surrounding you. What you're replaced with is a forward-facing map where you're actually spotting the enemies for the remainder of your team. Now, you want to make sure that you're trying to work yourself into an elevated position or somewhere where you're actually in some decent amount of cover. The reason that I say that is, again, you're not real mobile. It takes a second to unmount your rifle. And when you're elevated, you're able to actually see more of the battlefield. Now, I think that makes a whole lot of sense, and everybody probably understands that concept, but you don't necessarily even need to see the enemy. All you need to do is they need to pop up on your screen somewhere for your sniper to spot for the rest of your team these enemies. Now, if you look at my map in the lower left-hand corner, you'll notice how the size changes. It goes from a bigger pie to a smaller pie. What's happening there is when you scope in, you've got a narrower field of vision. Basically, that means you're not going to see as many enemies on the perimeters of your vision. So what I always suggest is when you're using this function, try to be scoped out as much as possible. If you see an enemy or you're going to try and support your team, then scope in. You're still going to help out, but don't just sit there ADS'd because it's going to limit the beneficial aspect of this special ability. So it's something that takes a little bit of getting used to. These maps are pretty small, and there's not a lot of places where this is actually tremendously useful, but it's really pretty helpful in things like combat mission and hotspot, places where you know the enemy's going to be coming. I always prefer it on defense to offense, mainly because when I'm on offense, I want to make sure that I'm attacking, and guess what? If your rifle is mounted to a surface, you're not moving towards the objective. Granted, you can still help your team move up, and there are certain uses for it, but really it's more of a defensive weapon, and it's something that you can use to your advantage and the team's. Alright guys, that's going to wrap us up for session 2. As always, I appreciate you watching, and ultimately I hope that you found something that you can take away and start utilizing in your game to maybe make you a better player overall. The next episode, session 3, we're going to talk about the different point streaks, the offense and defense, kind of thoughts and reviews of each. Some best practices for shooting overall, as well as some sightlines on the different maps that can give you an advantage using this class. And then session 4 is really when we're going to start talking about weapon reviews, going over the different rifles and kind of thoughts and opinions. But until the next time, please feel free to leave a comment. If there's something I'm not covering that you'd like to hear or have questions about, leave a comment. I'll either answer in the comments or I'll be happy to add it into one of my next episodes. So, as always, I appreciate you guys watching and have a good one. Take care.